It'd be wild to know what types of clinical trials they're doing now.
That's
Dum dum dum.
yeah. That's the thing. This is where I get speculative. I don't think it ever stopped.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like they probably moved. Well, what's funny now is that I think that they're openly doing, because they're doing psilocybin tests on people right now. That's one. They're doing one with Molly or ecstasy, whatever. Like is that the MDMA?
Yep, ketamine, things like
Yep,
that.
they're doing that. So they're kind of just doing it more in the open now.
Mhm.
And it has people's more. And also, I say a lot. I went
That
over.
happens.
You were wicked loud, and I go When I did the recording for like 4 hours, I edited out me going and you. Oh, and water bottles. No more drinking water bottles into the mic.
Okay, bet. This is a learning experience, folks. It's a
Exactly. I
learning
was like, let's
experience.
bring it up.
Bet.
Yeah, see, I just did yeah.
It happens. That's one of those filler things, you
Right.
know.
But the drugs, the clinical trials now are more open. But I think that's good insofar as that people can do it with informed consent. Because it's shady doing it on people without knowing. Have you ever seen the videos of the LSD giving soldiers drugs?
Yes.
Where they
English World War II soldiers, right?
I forget it, but it was funny. They gave them drugs and
Yeah.
they just start like falling over and they can't stay in line.
It's insane.
Right. Hold on a second. I'm just.
It's funny you mentioned like the soldier aspect of things because that's kind of where the origins of the whole program started. It started with programs called Project Artichoke and Bluebird. They were the predecessors of MK Ultra in a sense, and they were created because there's a few reasons, but the biggest consensus reason is because after I forget which war it was, to be honest with you. I think it was World War II. Soldiers were coming back and they were having sympathy for the enemies. Like they were sympathizing for enemies. So they were under the assumption that the Soviets and the communists and North Korea, all those the enemy states, were using these substances to like brainwash enemy soldiers into basically just being, so that's what they claim why they started it. But if you look back further, the Nazis were experimenting with drugs like there was no tomorrow.
Yeah, I imagine because most of the pharmaceutical companies, Merck, Pfizer, Bayer, all of those were German companies making all sorts of chemicals. But then the other one, what has to do with the Germans, similar, is when they started doing mass murders. All the soldiers were mentally fucked up from it because you can only shoot so many women and children until you hate your own and that's
naturally
because all those Nazi soldiers, some of them were assholes, I imagine, but the other ones thought that they were actually like fighting for the fatherland at first. So then they went out and they were just young people who's never gotten full meals, you know what I mean? So they just joined the Nazi party, joined the army, and then they thought they're doing good stuff, and then they end up just start having to murder so many people that people couldn't do it. So then it got to the extent of that's why they created the gas chambers for efficiency and murder, because it was a psychological thing that they couldn't find enough soldiers to commit that many murders, and they couldn't the bullets, because if you kill 100,000 people, like want to murder them, that's 100,000 bullets. So what they ended up doing is they would stack them up, like 3 people, 4 people deep, and they would try to shoot their heads so they'd get them. Yeah, that was how they. And there's all film of it, but there's all sorts of film of all. Everyone's always seen it of the. No matter what war it is, it's always the civilians lined up against like a big old trench, and then they just shoot them, and they all fall in.
Fall down, yeah.
Yep, it happens. Nice happy notes. Every culture does it. That's always happened.
My reason for being so passionate about this topic is because, like you said, every civilization does this. It's because people want to look at America like we're different than everybody else. You know, people have that kind of image in their head that, oh, we're the best country. I'm not debating anything about America or the country
Yeah.
itself. I'm saying we do experiments, we do kill innocent people, we
Yeah.
do these other things that we tell other people, we tell our people are bad because they do it, but we do the same exact things time and time again.
Yeah.
So the hypocrisy is just it's insane.
At best, we're average.
Yeah.
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 I mean, that's decent, I suppose, because we do have the largest prison population in the world, so that's pretty crazy. Then we probably have the most drug addicts. But then if you think about it, China doesn't have a big prison population because they just kill them. so their prison population isn't as big for particular reasons.
Re-educate or kill. That's their motto.
Yeah. But then, what is it? So we have drugging people involuntarily. Dun, dun, dun. But that's kind of funny. I would imagine being a scientist involved in that, of giving a whole bunch of dudes. By like trip number 5, it'd be pretty funny. Giving some John and just watching him trip out. He thinks he's gonna be hooking up with a hooker, and he just loses his mind on acid.
Well, yeah, that's the Operation Midnight Climax, which is
Yeah,
a
that's the
crazy
one,
freaking
yeah.
name for the operation. But they would hire prostitutes in San Francisco, New York, Boston, and they would give them LSD, and they'd get the Johns in, like you said, and they'd just give them the LSD, and then there'd be a two-way mirror, and there would be 2 CIA operatives watching it all happen, and they would take notes and see if they could extract information from the guy. It's just... Okay, out of all of them, that's the funniest, I admit.
Right?
That
I mean,
location's very sad. That's kind of you're gonna hook up
Exactly.
with a prostitute and that's I can see the humor.
Just
in that.
slipping a bunch of guys. Yeah, acid. That's. But then, all sorts of terrible experiments happen. But I wonder. I'm trying to think of connectors where we can put this. Testing out drugs on people, testing out chemicals on people. That'd be where we tested them on animals. We do lots of animal testing. Lots of animal testing. Like crazy.
For basically everything.
Yeah, the first
medications, everything.
Exactly, to get FDA approval, it has to get to long-term human clinical trials. But before the long-term clinical trials in humans, we have to test the drugs in animals, and there's an entire industry of making rats and mice for laboratory use. Yeah, actually, a funny part about that is I'm not sure. We'd have to look it up again. But I remember reading something about they don't clone the mice, but they breed them. So they have it so much that all of them have similar genetics. Gotcha. So it's not a varied enough group to be varied in a clinical trial because they've been using the same ones for so long. There you go.
So it's like just a completely unnatural subspecies of rat, basically.
Or if it's at least like a mono type of rat of just generations of the same type of little rodent, little vermin.
It's very odd.
Vermin.
It's very, very odd.
You ever see Vermin Supreme?
No.
You don't know the guy with the boot on his head?
No.
He's a crazy guy from New York. And I know his name because he wears the boot on his head and is known as the crazy guy.
There's a lot of craziness out there.
Right. So drugs. What type of drugs do they give people?
The most popular one that people like to discuss is LSD because seems to be the most common from what knowledge is out there. But there's evidence of PCP, MDMA or Molly or ecstasy, psilocybin mushrooms, which are magic mushrooms, marijuana, like very large amounts of marijuana, which that's probably nothing because back then there was not potent.
Right.
That's just like icing on the cake type thing. Heroin, cocaine, you name it, mescaline. They were given just substances on substances out there, which is just it's insane. There was a whole faction of it where you look at historical figures too, which is the craziest part for me, it's Whitey Bulger was involved with it when he was in prison in '59.
Nice.
And they gave him, basically, from my knowledge, 70 times, I think.
Nice.
The numbers vary, but it's between 50 and 70 from what I've heard. And yeah, he claims that after he got out of prison from that, up till the day he died, he couldn't sleep for more than a couple hours at a time. He had permanent damage. Like, he'd wake up freaking out every single night for multiple times, just having panic attacks and PTSD from what happened.
Well, I'm sure that's also because he's a crazy person that had wild life
Could
too.
be it as well,
But
yes.
I'm sure in
Could
his
be it as
life
well.
of, I'm sure he's murdered a couple, all sorts of
Not
men
down
and
that one.
women,
Yep,
and
not down
that's
that one.
so. Yeah, I'm sure that it wasn't just the drugs and why he
Yeah,
couldn't get
no
a good
doubt,
night's
yes,
sleep.
yes.
I mean, stabbing some people in the chest would
Kill
haunt
Kill people
you.
with your bare hands probably
Yeah,
would give
it
you a little
wouldn't.
something. Another famous one, which is kind of, this one's a little like, oh, okay, Tendazinsky, the Una Bomber.
Okay.
He was part of, I believe it was Harvard. Harvard had a LSD program funded by the U.S. government during this time. As I said, it was like, again, the numbers are very shaky for accurate numbers, but it was upward to 30 to 80 universities that were giving out substances to students and faculty and stuff like that. And Tendazinsky was I believe he was a professor at the time, or he might have been a student and then he became a professor after. But regardless, he was involved with his trials, and it just, from what his brother claims, his brother wrote a book about him. His brother claims he was a very sane person up until he went away to Harvard at his time, and after Harvard, he was never the same. So this is speculative, but you could say that all those, uncontrolled, just extreme circumstances might have fried his brain a little bit, where he kind of had a realization about the tech aspect of what could happen in the future. Not justifying a Tendazinsky in any way,
Yeah.
or Whitey Bulger. I'm just saying this. You have to kind of realize that these people were really, really associated with some crazy things at the time. And to my knowledge, both of them agreed to partake in these trials. Whitey Bulger did it for a lesser prison sentence. And I'm not sure why Tendazinsky did it though, but I know he cooperated with that.
Look at that. See, so it's not all bad. There you go.
Yeah, not all of it. Yeah, it's insane. There's a book called Chaos by Tom O'Neill. I highly recommend this book, folks. I've only read about half of it, and I'm currently reading it. I'm reading 2 books at the moment, so I'm kind of all over the place. But man, it's the connection between Charles Manson and his family, like the family of the craziness and that, and his connection to the CIA, of all things, and how they were basically supplying him with large amounts of LSD.
Nice.
Which is just insane. And obviously Charles Manson was trying to incite a race war, trying to bring down, just the system, more or less. The book doesn't just focus on that. It talks about, the Sharon Tate aspect of things, and the Hollywood and the atmosphere around the time, and it gets very deep, but very, very knowledgeable and good book. He's been on Joe Rogan as well. I've watched that podcast 4 or 5 times.
There you go.
It's so crazy. Basically, the CIA federal agents, I should say, were working with local law enforcement to consistently get Charles out of prison. And lessen his sentences. He was also involved with LSD trials while he was in prison, so that was kind of his introduction to the aspect of things. He was always a deadbeat. He was always a scumbag. But whether he always believed he wanted to start a race war and just cause havoc is I don't know that aspect, but he definitely did after. That's for sure.
Nice.
And it's just, you look at all these things. It's like those are 3 prominent. You can label them as villains, iconic villain figures in American history. And again, I'm going to be very clear. I'm not saying it's because of the trials, but they were all involved with a trial that messed up their mind in one way or another, orchestrated by the U.S. government.
But what's crazy is that there are lots of other people who do that completely sober.
Yeah.
That's crazier.
Yeah.
At least you can have an excuse. Then you have a defunct, meshed up brain. But some people never do drugs.
Yeah.
And they murder people.
Well, then you got, what's that clown, John Wayne Gacy, or something like that. I don't
There
think
you
he
go.
ever, from my knowledge, he was never involved with that type of stuff, but it definitely does happen.
Mm-hmm. Wild and crazy.
It's I don't want everyone to sit here and be like, "Oh, this is a depressing episode." But
No,
because
don't worry about anyone.
that people, I just feel like
You're here to have a conversation with me.
fair enough.
And they're here to
valid,
listen.
valid.
And there's no one listening. Just remember that. It's
Fair
me and
enough.
you. We're just recording to make sure if any of us say anything nice, we can listen to it later.
Fair enough.
What else? What else on the conspiracies of drugs would you like to put out?
Trying to think what else went down. This one I'm not as knowledgeable on, but I'll just give a brief overview of it. There was a village or a town in France around this time of MK Ultra, and basically the foods. I think it was a bread supply. Again, you guys will you have to look into this like further if you're interested in this because I'm not knowledgeable on things. But there was a village or a town, and the bread supply was supposedly laced. Now, it was a theory that it was just a moldy bread. I think it's agarot or agcot, something like that. It's a mold that grows on yeast.
Ergot.
Ergot, yes, which people think is responsible for the Salem witch trials. That's a theory that people were kind of hallucinating due to the bacteria, thinking people were actually performing witchcraft due to the hallucinations.
That could be possible.
Which is a
no,
cool-
I
cool
heard
theory,
that.
yeah.
But then that wouldn't explain why it happened throughout Europe
Yeah,
and every European country at the time.
people were just crazy back then.
That's it.
But that was one of the theories of what happened with this village in France, because the majority of the population started mass hallucinating, and basically just freaking out. People committed suicide.
Nice.
It was extreme, and there's. The theory is, it might be more than a theory, but the connection is that the CIA was responsible for seeing what would happen if a mass population like that would experience a mass hallucination. So the theory is they laced the supply of food with the LSD, which it's like, okay, why would they do that to France? Well, why would they do it in Canada? They did this in Canada, so they're willing to spread out to other countries, not just their own population. So it doesn't seem completely implausible, if you ask me.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, but they had the resources. They had the
See what
motive.
happens.
They had the funding.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's insane. I don't know, man. It's very very bizarre. Another thing I forgot to mention is have you ever heard of Operation Paperclip?
Yep.
So you know how they brought the Nazis over for NASA. They actually brought Nazis over for the CIA as well.
Yeah.
And when some of the scientists that were brought over, they were on this payroll. They were in concentration camps where they were giving out substances to prisoners in the camps at the time in Nazi Germany, where they were giving out similar substances for similar reasons. So one could draw the connection that they kind of got inspiration from Nazi Germany in the way of experimenting. Again, there's multiple reasons why this could have happened. There's not one sound example of why this all started, from my knowledge, because they destroyed all the evidence as soon as they found out the gig was up. They just kind of burned everything. That's evident because there's sub projects. There's Operation Delta, MK Delta, MK Naomi, which are two sub projects of MK Ultra, which we have very to close to none evidence of. We just have references to them in the official MK Ultra documents, but I assume those were worse than MK Ultra. If they decided to get rid of those first, those must have been extreme compared to what they were doing with MK Ultra.
I think everyone was probably experimenting.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I would have to imagine that England, the Soviets, the Germans before the war. Yeah, and so it was, what is it? Because the U.S. was experimenting on people before World War II. We were doing crazy stuff.
Yeah. The Tuskegee experiment.
Yeah,
Things like that.
people always bring that up. That's as they should. But what's wild is it's terrible, but it's in scope. It's one of those things like the Boston Massacre. How many people died in the Boston Massacre?
I couldn't tell you. Was it like a dozen? 2 dozen?
4.
4, okay.
And it was a massacre.
Okay.
Yep. Same thing, but those experiments, but I think it was less than 100 people
That passed away?
that were infected with syphilis.
Oh, it was thousands.
Was it?
Yeah, they gave it to thousands of individuals.
They probably was it?
Yeah, I'm not sure how many died, but thousands were injected with the virus or got it transmitted through people who had it.
Let's see.
Yeah, pull up the exact number because I could be wrong as well. But from what I remember is they were just giving out physicals to the people in Tuskegee, Alabama, and just saying they were giving them health vaccines and stuff, and they were dosing them with a live syphilis. And from my knowledge, it was upward of 1,000 people, and then it was transmitted to other people through intercourse and things like that after the fact.
Yeah. By then, 28 patients had died directly from syphilis, 100 from complications of syphilis, 40 of the patients' wives were infected with syphilis, and 19 children were born with syphilis.
Does it say how many were dosed, though?
Let's see. 400.
Okay.
See? I mean, I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying.
No, yeah.
Uh,
I'll always admit when I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It's interesting. All right. I wonder why I had the.
I'm
notion
not.
of
I'm not
1,000.
justifying it. That's why I'm saying,
yeah.
like, in the scope of human experiments as compared to what the Nazis were doing,
Oh, yeah.
because I'm pretty sure the U.S. was doing crazy stuff that kind of managed to not be as extreme, and then the Nazis started doing the weird extreme. Like,
Yeah.
I think probably World War II stopped the U.S. from doing weird stuff where
Yeah.
they were just like, we'll focus on other, but they were probably testing all sorts of chemical weapons.
Definitely, absolutely.
Probably on black people.
Yeah.
Like,
Historically,
that's-
Native Americans, black people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
things. So, yeah.
and probably poor white people too. Poor white people. There you go. That's what I do there. I equated black people with poor white people, so it's like automatically assuming that black people are poor. I'm a terrible. No, but it's I'm trying to bring equality. There's white and black, poor. We're all average. That's it. It's just
Compared to the elites, we're nothing.
yeah. It's just an
Financial-wise.
example of to show how hard it is to rise in the middle class in America. That's what I would say. The traveling.
It's insane if you look at Nazi Germany, for instance. I mean, aside from the drugs and the genocides, I mean, they were practicing extreme forms at the highest levels of occultism and things along those lines. You know, trying to find contact with off-world entities. I mean, this is a fact. Hitler particularly was fascinated by these types of things, trying to contact aliens, in interact with other dimensions. Like he was very out there with his like beliefs of what was possible.
I don't know if that's true.
He was, I'm telling you, Alex, he was insane with these ideas. Because you know what? I can tell you why. He was always on drugs. He was constantly being given. He had a doctor called Dr. Feelgood who was constantly giving him drugs all the time.
Yeah.
If you're constantly on drugs, you're going to start to think about aliens and demons. And if you're that evil, you're going to be like, oh, what else can I communicate with?
I don't think he was. I don't think he was evil.
Okay, explain.
Germany was at the lowest point it could be.
Okay.
People were starving. They were bombed. They lost a war. There was no money. And then there needed to be order. So a strong man came in and brought order. He brought his country to an industrialized nation, one of the largest in the world. But what happened with that was they pushed back on the ideas of nationalism, and they connected it to medieval pride,
Okay.
and they connected it to Roman pride. They took on the idea that they were part of the Roman Empire,
Okay.
which is why they have all those Roman eagles and things and the banners that they have. So they connected that to the past, to have a strong connection to the past. But there's nothing out of the ordinary in what they did, even so much as to say the anti-Semitism, which existed throughout Europe in the year 1200 to 1300. And during the Renaissance, there was anti-Semitism. So it wasn't the Nazi Party, it was human beings being discriminatory against Jewish populations that migrated, other populations that migrated, gypsy cultures throughout Europe. There was nothing that he did that was clinically insane, except, I mean, once they got into the magnitude of numbers, but let's say 6 million people, Jewish people died. Poland had almost equal numbers of deaths. The Soviets had 20 million people die.
Yoga Mao was like 80,
So,
60.
yeah, there was terrible anti-Semitism, but it wasn't evil. It was the way all humans act. All humans are evil in that sense.
That's what I was gonna say. If that
So
might be
it's
true,
it's
but yeah.
to deny that human beings all possess that capacity for evil would be denying their humanity. So it's, are you a human? Then you have a terrible capacity for darkness.
It's kind of the Jordan Peterson perspective when he says, you know, if you were in Nazi Germany, you would be a Nazi, even if you say you wouldn't. Like you'd be a supporter at the time.
Exactly. That's why with all this COVID stuff, you see a mass psychosis similar to what we saw after September 11th, whereas rational people would look at September 11th as something that happens in the course of history for reasons that happens in reasons. But instead of responding rationally, we reacted viscerally, misdirected. And at that point, if you asked millions of Americans if they thought that we should carpet bomb or drop nuclear bombs on Afghanistan, what do you think they would have said?
But the lies they were told, I think they'd say yes because of what they were told,
Yeah,
circumstance-wise.
but there was still not even lies. There was hate.
Yeah, but it was hate
There was hate.
originated from fabrications and
No, I mean, if people saw the buildings go down, it brought up senses of patriotism, senses of empathy, and then that fear was met with hate. If you ask people after those towers went down, should we nuke this country? People's automatic responses would have been yes.
Yes,
There
but-
were lots of people that would have wished death on other people for arbitrary means, like you said, fabrications. So to separate us as, to separate Hitler or someone who pulled the trigger, that would be like, that's evil. For example, we dropped 2 nuclear bombs.
yeah, only
Those are
country that would drop
genocidal.
them, yeah.
Those are genocidal. We dropped firebombs in Dresden. Each of those killed between 50 to 100,000 people. That's evil. We committed evil. So are we evil?
I think I had this conversation with a family member recently. It's kind of the same. I don't think the American population is evil. I think this is my belief. I'm not speaking for you. I think we're run by evil individuals at certain levels. Yeah, personally, I think historically all countries have had evil leaderships. We've skimmed over a few of them. Whether we agree on the definition of evil or not, my perspective of evil, and again, I respect your view. I think there's mass evilness going on around the world. Personally, on different in every country, I think the people, MK Ultra, for instance, I think those people, the CIA director at the time, the president at the time, the DOD officials in charge, I think those people were inherently evil individuals for doing what they did and allowing it to happen. That's me.
Yeah, they're psychotic people. Definitely psychotic people, and definitely cruel people. And there are evil and cruelty. I understand these exist. But to simplify someone like Hitler as someone evil, as if he's non-human, is a terrible thing to do, because there was an ability for him to connect with humanity on the level he was operating on, which is why he would be considered a passionate leader that he was. That's to get that many people involved on a visceral level of nationalism, of hope. Those are all rational things that human beings are drawn to, because that didn't just happen in Nazi Germany or pre-Nazi Germany. It was also happening in fascist Spain, similar ideas of nationalism. It was also happening in Italy,
Yes.
concepts of nationalism. And Hitler was motivated by, what's his name?
Mussolini.
Mussolini, that was it. And these people weren't evil. They were manipulative, cruel, ambitious, maniacal, but those are all human traits. Those capacities are on in all human beings. And people always try to make those two seem as if or even Stalin. Stalin's a little bit different, but as if those people are evil or they're crazy. They were very refined in what they were doing, in knowing that they wanted to be theater actors. Each one of them wasn't just some random guy, whatever. They had lots and lots of ambitions to be theatrical and artistic and public speakers at the time, like those beer halls speaking, that they actually had to be that good to take control of and connect with 100 minds in a room at a time. So something they said had to connect with the other 100 people in the room, which means if it connected, that means that there was truth to it. Whether it was factually based or not, it's by that saying truth is the way you interpret a fact.
That's what I was gonna say. I think that the way you present the information is a big thing. I mean, you look at weapons of mass destruction after 9/11. Blatant lie. Everyone knows it's a
Big
lie
time lie,
nowadays.
yeah.
But everyone was pushing that narrative, and people just regurgitated it. People didn't look into the people did look into the facts, but the majority of people didn't look into the facts. So I'm saying that can happen in any regime, in any country, in any situation.
Oh, yeah.
You just manipulate a truth or a lie, if you want to, whatever you want
Yeah.
to do it, to rally troops behind you.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens very, very often. So, and again, I don't know. I'm not a historian in those areas. I'll be honest. I just think that it's really the lack of pressure against the leaderships from the people, because I guarantee you, during the height of the genocide in China or communist Russia or Nazi Germany or any of these countries, I guarantee you there was people of the population who realized, okay, this isn't what we signed up for. This isn't what we supported. This is absolute insanity. I guarantee you there was a large factions of the population. Bet you there was still factions that were like, oh, yeah, I'm going to stay with these guys because this is my guy. There's always that, oh, this is my guy type of thing,
And that's where I think it's at, is that the evil that we think and attribute to a certain individual, there are millions of people with similar mindsets behind that.
Yeah.
So we're all kind of evil in our own sense. But there is the quality of good, but just as easily, we have what's called techniques of neutralization, and there's psychological rationalization that we add into our brain to justify cruelty that we commit to others, or crimes or harm that you commit to others. Like one of them is denial of the victim, of saying, if you steal a chocolate bar from Walmart, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and you steal a chocolate bar, you rationalize the harm that you caused by saying, well, there's no victim. You're neutralizing your criminality of stealing it by saying, well, there's no victim. I just stole it from Walmart. No one's going to know. They lose 1,000 chocolate bars a year. We do that in all sorts of ways. Another one would be known as an appeal to higher authority, whereas, why did you punch that cop in the face? Well, he was on top of my brother. So then your higher authority, fuck the law, your authority goes to your blood.
Yes.
So it's an appeal to a higher authority. We do that with our senses of nationalism, where we justify cruelty we do by appealing to a higher authority. Like, why did we drop nuclear bombs? Well, because we needed to save the U.S. That's not true.
I agree.
So we neutralize the harm we did and play a mental game by dehumanizing people who did it. Say, or you justify the harm of saying, well, they started Pearl Harbor and they were... No, but you still killed 100,000. You're using techniques of neutralization to try to clear up what is objectively murder.
Yeah, that's you highlighted a very important point there. We always make sure the enemy is I'm not victimized, portrayed in the way that they're the worst thing to ever exist and never will exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No matter what country you are, your enemy is always portrayed as the epitome of evil, the epitome of danger. It's like
It's wrongly, we dehumanize people.
yes.
And that's what happens right now. We're seeing in our two parties the dehumanization of you're lacking, not you, but people are not seeing the humanity in others and trying to understand why people would do terrible things. And, like, for example, some of the reasons are some people see that January 6th mob action, then other people complain about the Black Lives Matter mob actions, and they only look at one justified there, they look at the other as justified, and the other one they condemn, and they condemn the condemner. That's another technique of neutralization, of saying, well, it's not us, it's you. Like, we're not committing crimes. You guys are the offenders. So everyone just kind of dehumanizes each other, and we saw it so much as on the Republican side or whatever, we dehumanize people and call them libtards. That's one, and then they dehumanize people and by calling them illegals. It's not even a human; it's an illegal.
Yes.
Or
an alien.
Yeah, and you're just like, this is not. You're dehumanizing people.
Yes.
And then what they did again was dehumanize people. The left dehumanize people by saying, like, if you're unvaccinated, don't go to the hospital, die. You know what I mean? You made that's a terrible way to neutralize wishing harm on another individual. And I don't understand why there's no valid need to wish harm on other people. I'm pro-murder, by the way. I am so pro-murder.
Okay. Fair enough.
Meat is murder. I'm pro.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Abortion is more murder. I'm pro abortion. Pedophiles don't serve a use. You can kill them. I am pro murder.
I'm pro death penalty in the pedophile aspect as well.
And I actually did the math on this of being pro murder because it serves human beings have always killed each other for biological purposes, evolutionary purposes, tribalism. So murder or death causing, we'll call it, has always been a part of humanity. But I did it, and the same thing we said as evil. I ran the math, and you'd say, I would never kill 500,000 people. I would never kill 1 million people, right? But what if I told you there was a button you could press that could kill all the pedophiles at once? Out of 8 billion people on Earth, let's say 0.5% of them were pedophiles. You'd be killing about 1 million people at a press of a button.
You asking me if I would do it?
I'm just throwing it out.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But yeah, would you?
I don't know. I'm not the person to make that decision.
See? So are you evil or not? You could kill 1 million people at a push, but it's justified murder.
That's the thing. It's
So
justified in a way. I just know I personally,
Yeah.
no matter how heinous your crime is, I couldn't. If I killed one person, I physically couldn't live with my mind. Like mind would just, I'd lose it.
Yeah.
So if anything more than one person, I can't even imagine personally. No matter how heinous you are, man. You know.
It's a very well. That's why I am pro murder and the efficiency of an execution.
Yeah.
I'm just like, if this person killed 4 people and molested or raped someone, you're like, fucking out of the gene pool. You didn't make it. You know what I mean? So out of that, I understand the rationality of getting rid of people. Yeah. So I'm saying that at what point do we start drawing the line? Right? Because there are people who want to execute people. We can execute the mentally ill, the mentally deranged, all sorts. So we just have a shifting line, and it's arbitrary on what you want to justify. And that's part of the underlying argument of why I'm saying Hitler wasn't evil. He was a rational person dealing at an industrial scale scope. It just so happened to be that it was at a time of economic depression, and when depressions occur, hate goes up. Yeah. Towards outsiders specifically. And then at the same time, it was at a scale of industrialization where they could execute mass murders like none before. But even Genghis Khan and all that, mass murders all the time. Any type of Mehmet, Mehmet the Conqueror. He was someone who conquered Constantinople. Anytime there were armies, there were mass executions of tens of thousands of people. So that's what war, but they just brought it to a different level with machine guns, gassings, and all that stuff. But it was also off of a medieval notion that they had from 400 years earlier. So it's just animal chimpanzee shit that got machine guns and mustard gas or whatever, Zyklon B.
Yeah, you think I've always thought it was kind of weird, this doubling of the human brain, like over the course of like what, 1,000,000 years or something. After all that time, man, we still didn't manage to find a way to just live goddamn peacefully. No matter how big our brain seems to get, we just want to keep killing each other and have animalistic instincts. It's
Yeah, we're biological beings.
yeah,
That's we're just animals.
Yeah.
Mostly murder. Yeah, people live very comfortably. As terrible as we are as individuals, we're also good as individuals.
I agree.
That's so. If you can look at someone to be part of the us, the we, the people, the less inclined you are to commit harm to them. So the same way that our parties dehumanize people, having a wider definition of us, we, the people, makes it much harder to cause harm to someone. So that I think what we have to do as a society, as a humanity on Earth, is expand the we, the us, to not any faction or group or political party, but to all humans on Earth. And I think any definition of that is an arbitrary classification that they're just trying to dehumanize someone at that point, because we're all humans. So everyone deserves equal rights, equal share, equal opportunity, equal love, and because everyone has the capacity for evil, but everyone has the capacity for good, right?
Well said.
Like that's the way we just need to look at it. So the bigger us we have, so fuck parties. I'm not here to pick a side.
Yeah.
That's not what we're here for.
I've personally experienced in my life. I've classified myself as a Democrat and a Republican. Kind of switched my stances. I mean, I used to be very left leaning, then I was very right leaning, and then I realized, like, dude, like if I'm just restraining myself to one side, I'm like, first of all, half the population is going to instantly hate me and shut down all my ideas. The other population is going to soak up all my ideas like it's the gospel. I don't want either of those.
Yeah, no.
I just want to conversate with people.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
And talk to people like me who say, "Hey, Hitler ain't that bad."
Listen. I don't agree necessarily. But the difference is between like what could have happened. I could be like, no, I disagree. Dude, I will listen to anyone's stance on anything because, bro, like, I just think civilized conversation is what needs to happen. I think you agree with that as well. If a conversation can literally just the flow of ideas without getting upset, without getting mad, without bringing ideologies into it, just hearing people out, dude, that's literally how you end meaningless altercations. It's just how you break it down. You said one thing. You said I don't want to touch on this, but you said you're pro-abortion. I'm anti-abortion, but you know what I didn't do? I didn't start yelling at you. Oh, I disagree. You know what I mean? But if we were on CNN or if we were on Fox News or MSNBC and we had an audience, we would sit there and yell at each other.
Dude, I will double down. I am so abortion. I am mandatory abortion. I think anyone under the age of 19 or 20, if you're pregnant, not a fucking chance. You have a life to live. You can't support that kid. Fucking no free contraceptives,
Jeez.
Free pill, whatever there is.
Wow.
I am.
All right. I hard disagree with that statement.
Why do you disagree?
I'm mad at you. Here's the thing with my abortion argument. It's not an argument because I don't argue with anybody because it's the one thing where if I start talking about abortion, if I get too deep into it, I'll start becoming the hypocrite I'm talking about because there's a part of me that's like I can't do it. But like I'm working on it. You know what I mean? Me personally,
I'm pro-life too because if it was for abortions, I probably wouldn't be here.
that's how I
See,
see it as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
that's
My mom got pregnant with me at 16.
yeah. See, there you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
deadbeat father left me. She raised me by herself. Things like that.
See, I'm here to save people like your mother.
yeah.
But like, get rid of it. You're not allowed to have it. Have a life.
Yeah, but I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. But I wouldn't. I have to look at it as I wouldn't be here right now in this carnation. I'd probably be here in another carnation eventually because I believe in that system of life and death. But
Yeah.
man, I look at it as all right. You know, I might as well not waste this opportunity. My mom did, you know, give up some opportunities as many people have done in their lives. Give up many potential opportunities in life. Some haven't. Some have still managed to do things that they wish to do at a young age. But I agree for a good portion of people, it is a disposition to have someone,
It's
a
tough.
child that young.
Yeah, I'm kind of joking, but at the same time, it is.
Yeah,
It's the math isn't in your favor.
No,
If
definitely
if
not.
you're a 17-year-old girl who just had sex with a random guy, and that guy is not sticking around, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a fucked up kid like you.
Yeah. You got a kid who blames everything on the U.S. government.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's in, you know, I've thought about this a little bit too, you know, like an alternative to how to kind of resolve the family structure. And it's like, it's not an easy resolution. My opinion, it's not going to be a popular one. I think we got to stop over sexualizing our youth and actually teach our youth about sex and not be afraid. I'm not talking about, okay, let's talk about it in schools. Have your family sit down and actually explain the mechanics of sex, the thought behind sex, why we do it, how it's done. Give an actual description of why you should wait until later on, and if you choose not to, the importance of being prepared for if a situation arises at a young age. I've had sex at a young age, as many people have as
What was his
teenagers
name?
growing up. Funny guy. It's but you know what I mean. We have to kind of reevaluate our structure here because you can't be like, listen, mom, dad, you got to stop being deadbeats. You got to stay with your kids because people are just gonna be deadbeats, you know. And if they're not a deadbeat, some people just aren't ready for things like that. You know, and me personally, I called my dad a deadbeat a minute ago. I have no hard feelings against my father. I really don't. I have hard feelings against what he did to my mother. You know,
Yeah.
putting her in that. But for me personally, I'd have to be one miserable person to just sit there 20-something years later and be like, yeah, I hate that guy for what he, like,
Yeah.
I don't got time for that, you know?
No, that's life.
It is life, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on education, contraceptive, access to contraceptives, the idea of the pill, and then the Nuva ring. That's another one.
What's the Nuva ring?
It's a little thing that you stick up there and
Okay.
it
Stops the
yeah,
sperm.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's I'm not a scientist, so
Yeah.
but it's a.
I know what you're talking about.
It's
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
blocker
Yeah,
type
yeah.
thing, or something like that. Whatever. Which is why I shouldn't be making these decisions. But yes, and also we need a program that teaches girls that guys are stupid.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. It'd be like, don't. He's an idiot. This is it.
Yep.
That's
Don't have a one night stand with that guy.
yeah.
At the Toby Keith
He's
concert.
using
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
He's
Yes,
using you.
yes.
Like he,
Yes.
guys are pieces of shit, and he's using you.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a thing because the math is certainly there though. That if it's not a 2-parent household, that there are going to be psychological issues down the way. I mean, look at you, you're fucked up. You know?
Just a little bit.
But then the other one is, it makes it hard for the kid and the parent.
Yes.
Yeah. So if we could, anything that can reduce the likelihood of having a surprise pregnancy of younger people, I think that's it. But like you said, there's so many steps to take before abortion.
Yeah.
Then that's, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm pro-abortion, but I'm also pro doing everything possible to make sure that it doesn't get to that point of there being someone who doesn't want to have a kid to have a kid. And that's just, I think, reasonable because the other alternative is if you make it medically legal and once you're going to have a someone back alley abortion type. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I would never want to wish anyone to psychologically and physically go through that. That's just not. It's not healthy. So it's socially just know that it's. We should do everything to reduce that. We're not killing babies.
Yeah. I mean, I have a big bone to pick with Planned Parenthood in particular, the system, the racial aspect of it, why it was founded, the founders' belief.
I know all that, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it's disgusting, just trying to literally kill Black Americans. But there's been scandals of Planned Parenthood workers discussing how, oh yeah, we've made 30,000 this week from literally, and again, this is gonna sound insane. Just I can send you a reference to actually look into this and hear from their actual mouth the exact audio. There's a podcast from Joe Rogan with Alex Jones where they pulls up the exact audio of this happening.
Yeah.
Where Planned Parenthood workers will talk about how they sell, and this is again, it's gonna sound crazy. They sell aborted baby parts, and I know it sounds absolutely insane, and
That's how they used to get stem cells, right?
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's basically, and it's just you're making $30,000. I have a very, very big issue with late trimester abortions as well, which do happen. It's not as common in the U.S., but it does happen. There's an advocate, I forget what senator it was or a governor. It was one of the southern states, and I remember I can see his face and his southern accent in my mind. Again, I can show you the exact thing. I'll send you the exact thing on the podcast. I'll find it tonight when I get home. And he's just talking about, oh, okay, well, if the doctor decides that the baby's not healthy enough at the time of birth, we'll resuscitate the baby. And it's just like he's literally just talking about not third trimester, post-birth murder of a live organism.
Like I said, I am so pro murder. We should be able to abort that kid if he's 17.
That's crazy. Okay, that's insane. That I can't get behind. That I can't hear you out on. That's crazy. It's insane, man. We live in a freaking crazy society.
Once again, it's not crazy. It's just what we do naturally. Have you ever seen what?
I think that's crazy, personally.
Have you? No. There's so much baby murder in the world.
And I think all of it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the videos of storks throwing babies out of the nest?
Like actual babies or like baby birds?
Baby birds.
No.
There's
so they fly or something, right? That belief.
What they'll do is they'll look at the what the heck is it? They'll put a camera in the nest, and some storks happens with a lot with all sorts of different birds. What they do is let's say they have 2 chicks. Mm-hmm. The mother will start to know that food might not be able to support the 2 of them.
Yeah.
So they'll just look at one, find the weaker one, just pick it up and throw it out of the nest.
Jesus.
It's just a very regular thing that happens. Yep.
Jesus.
Yep. It's when resources are low and they can only support so many to have a successful next generation. So there's baby murder all over the place. And same thing with was it hippos kill the babies, I think, of the other young, and then lions do it.
Dolphins definitely do it.
Yeah.
They're vicious with that type of thing.
So it's crazy. There's baby murder all over. But see, yeah, abortion, baby murder. I'm honest with it.
Yeah. Listen, I ain't mad at you for your opinion.
Yeah, but we don't need and what's it called? Adoption. Adoption's cool.
Yeah.
Right? Get adopted. There are enough people in the world and so many people that can't have children.
Yeah.
And I think
there's a plethora of foster children who are probably not in the greatest system in the U.S.
Exactly. There are a whole bunch of kids around that need love and hope and opportunity.
Damn right. You got to get going.
No, that was just an hour marker on us.
Gotcha.
Because we need I figure we need at least an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, I could keep doing this all day.
Yeah, I think it's what's it called? I think
so Hitler was a good guy. Murder babies.
His beliefs. I heard him out. His beliefs.
Yeah.
Okay, let's conclude this with this way. On everything we said today, okay, a lot of it was opinion based, which I'm not against. I am very for sharing ideas. We can't argue the fact that the U.S. government experimented on their population.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
That's all we'll do. Then we'll
Let's
do
go.
it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but there was.
Beautiful.
We don't know if it was evil or not. Some people could have been bureaucrats having fun with it.
Okay.
Right?
Fair
Imagine.
enough, fair
Yeah.
enough, fair enough. Listen, you opened my mind in a way. Listen, I don't agree with the evilness that, but you've opened my mind to an alternative way of looking at it, I
Yeah.
should say, which I appreciate, and now I'm going to reevaluate kind of that outlook on things.
Well, we'll go a step further on. We'll cross MK Ultra, Tuskegee, and Tuskegee. A little Trump we'll throw in there, a little Hitler, and we'll bring it on. We'll talk about this right now. It's Andrew Jackson, The Trail of Tears.
Okay, yes.
That was genocidal.
Yes.
Was it psychotic? Was it rational? It was murderous. See, and this is where I
think it was
said
psychotic because we took land that wasn't ours, that was preoccupied by other people who had been there for countless years, who had not only claimed it for their own, had
thousands.
lived it.
Technically, I think thousands of
They
years.
didn't even have to claim it because it was historically theirs. It was their land.
Yep.
You know, they connected with it. They interacted with it. They had a beautiful culture with the land. And we came in, as we tend to do. Not us, humans in general, I should say, not just the U.S. And we bulldozered everything. We said, get the hell out of here. Take this little ass area. Walk your asses over there. We don't care if you die. We don't care if you get hungry. Take this, and we'll give you little plots of land. We'll give you, when you turn 18 in 200 years, we'll give you a couple $1,000s.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I think I don't
see. That's as much evil as Hitler, which means that if it was committed by Americans and average Americans, that means that we are equally. We have the capacity for that evil to go along with it.
I definitely agree. We have the capacity. Don't get me wrong. I definitely
the
agree with that.
darkness. So that's it. So it's not even that Hitler was good. It's that we're all evil. That's my point. We're all terrible people that could do mean things.
Agreed. I think there's duality, though. I think we're also capable of great peace and prosperity and love in the modern, well, not even the modern age, because now you got to be really reevaluating. Throughout history, we've been pretty bad as a collective. Not all.
There are
factions,
8
but-
billion of us who, and if you counted the number of murders,
dogs.
if you counted the number of murders for 8 billion, even if it was like 1 million murders, we're doing pretty good. The math is, you're like, that's a good, that's a 1% murder rate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about the idea, or the sentence, like the claim, like, oh, there's more slavery today than there was back during the Civil War or during the King Leopold II.
Yeah, I think that we're probably there. Definition of it's a loose definition of slavery, and then real slavery.
Yeah.
Definitely, because I'm sure if you go where like countries like United Arab Emirates and all that stuff,
modern
and
slavery, really?
Qatar and all that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, they have modern day slavery and all of that in different variations. Like she's a house cleaner. Oh yeah, but she lives.
Yeah.
She lives there, and we feed her.
Yes.
Oh, so she's not a slave? No, she's the house cleaner.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And you got the global sex trade operations, which
Big
happens
time.
everywhere. That's probably millions of people right there.
Oh, that's terrible. Which is another reason. I don't know if you, but I'm pro. Was it pro murder, pro legalizing drugs?
I am
but,
pro legalizing drugs
Yeah,
as well.
but also pro prostitution.
Decriminalizing drugs, I should say. But I think, okay, that's a great statement. I've said this to so many people, and so many people have looked at me like, are you crazy? Dude, you can tax it. You can track the spread and preventage of STDs and sexual diseases. It'll, in my opinion, it could cause less rapes and sexual assaults because less people are going to be sexually deprived. People who can't or aren't socially active or mentally in the space to actually interact with another human in a way that, like, oh, like go to a bar. You know, I think there's so many pros of legalizing prostitution.
Well, because the other choice is to ignore it and keep it illegal, leaving people susceptible to exploitation, harm, fear of going to the police for protection by denying something that's happening right now out of no other reason than having an individual moral objection to the behavior of others. And the moral objection to something is no reason to make something illegal.
Agreed.
Selling is legal, having sex is legal, so selling sex should be
Yeah,
legal.
yeah.
And then out of that is that, because the way I think about it is if there is a prostitute or someone and she just finished doing a job and the guy punches her in the face and takes her money, who's the criminal there?
Yeah.
That is a human being who earned money and protection because it's a human being. It's not a prostitute. It's someone who went to work, did their job, and they got robbed and assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
We as a culture should defend that person and hunt down the fucking criminal.
Agree. Yeah.
And that's just a simple way to look at it. So we need to keep people safe and so much of that. But the other thing is that's why I'm pro free education, free state college, free vocational training, grow our economy, free mental health care, free health care, all these steps to make sure, similar to abortion, to do everything before that to make sure that we don't get to the point of someone needing an abortion. We need to make sure our society is awesome and free and thriving so that someone who becomes a prostitute isn't doing it because they're desperate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's what we need to do. So why deny reality when it's us fucking up?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why I think we need to protect all people. You know? That's
Agreed.
it.
You know, you said the thing about the who's the real criminal if someone assaults and robs a prostitute after the act. I mean, that happens with pimps constantly. I mean,
Well, that's
yeah,
exactly
you
it.
know, it's not even customers half the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because a prostitute would have to look for protection from a pimp, someone who's a potentially exploitative, violent force.
Yeah.
One, they probably are providing protection because keeping her safe, but
Yeah.
also
Financial
at the
incentive
same
for her.
time, he could be abusing her just as easily, where we can eliminate any threat of violence if we just put it all above board.
Yeah.
You know, and
Absolutely.
it's not our business because, honest to God, if someone, there are nurses who are doing grosser shit than what prostitutes do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so let's get real. It's all about what you think your value's at, what you are willing to do, and I'm for it. And also, from the guy's perspective, there are lots of handicapped people, you know what I mean, who have human desires, who
Yes.
don't have the ability to go out and meet people in the city. You know, like if someone's a little bit off mentally, or someone has a medical condition that inhibits them from getting laid.
Yeah.
I think if that person wants to have a nice life with some human intimacy, I think that's a good way to fulfill. And if there's a woman who wants to meet that need, that's called a free market. And two people, you know what I mean?
Agreed.
Two people
Yeah.
getting happy on a fair market. And that's freedom, baby.
Damn right.
Yeah. So.
Damn right. Oldest profession in the book right there.
Exactly. Even Jesus cared about prostitutes.
He married one.
Well,
Shout out Mary
probably.
Magdalene,
Yeah, I didn't know if you married.
Yeah.
Jesus is a myth.
I'm not Catholic, so there's I don't,
Okay.
yeah.
Or Christian.
Historical
Yeah.
figure that's taken from other religions prior to it. It's
Yeah, that's the story.
You know, a prophet who's the son of God, who's resurrected 3 days after being hung on a cross with a head of nails. I mean, a crown of
thorns.
thorn.
It's a story. They've
Happens
told a
over
million
and over
times. Yeah.
again.
Yeah, and that's it. And then, but I'm definitely sure that there were a whole bunch of guys. I'm 34, so between the ages of 28 and 34, who were going around what's now Israel and all that stuff, saying these fucking Romans, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, well, let's get them the fuck out, and at the same time being like, guys, we know about this thing. It's called magic. It makes the bread rise, and it makes the alcohol, turns water into wine.
Yeah.
And then we'd find out 1,600 years later that's called fermentation, and that's yeast. Those are the explanations. Like the miracles of Jesus, they're all very explanatory from a scientific perspective, if you break it down, but they didn't know what was happening 2,000 years ago to explain it.
Yes.
Because if you think about it, some of the miracles of Christ were the fish, the bread, the wine, then the healing ones, like the blind being able to see, and then healing people with broken bones and stuff, like making the cripple walk.
Yeah.
So if you broke those down, setting a bone is serious work, because back in the day when Jesus was supposed to, if you broke a bone,
You're done. Yeah.
it's
It's
infected, you're
broken,
done, you're
yeah.
lost. So if there was some guy who learned how to set a bone properly to stop infection, and because then the body naturally heals out of magic,
Yeah.
like billions of years of evolution, but to us, at that time, it was magic. You're like, this fucking prophet knows how to deal with God.
Yeah.
He saved it. And then same thing with the ointments on the eyes that made people bleed. They wrote that he grabbed mud and then rubbed it on his eyes. So if you think about that, there was probably some antimicrobial something in to describe if you took a whole bunch of chemicals or organic materials and mixed them together, it would have medicinal properties, and I'm sure it alleviated people's. And you had guys doing this all over the Mediterranean at the time, and you were like, Jesus, yeah. No,
Yeah.
we called him Mike, but yeah, Jesus, you know?
Yeah.
Then the other ones were the fermentation of turning water into wine. No one knew how to explain that until about until Louis Pasteur, which was only in 1800. No one knew what turned water into wine. So they were like, God, Jesus, magic.
Yeah.
And then leavened bread is the same thing. Yeast causes bread to rise.
Naturally.
Then the other one was they didn't understand, or they kind of understood the concepts of reproduction. So then what you could do is take two fish. 'Cause in the Bible, they said two. It wasn't a fish. They took two fish.
I'm unfamiliar with that story personally.
The story is that there was a wedding or whatever, and Jesus showed up, and then he was like, I can make wine, or turn water into wine,
Yeah.
and then, or no, it was he made bread and fish.
Okay.
So what you do is he took one loaf of bread and made it into many. He took two fish and made it into many.
Okay.
Anyone who's made sourdough knows that you need the specific yeast inside the ball. Do you know of this?
No.
Any type of whiskey that you have, and any type of sourdough that you have, and there are other types of bread and stuff, the yeast is the original yeast in the dough.
Okay.
So it cultivates and it starts growing. So what you can do is, if you have one ball of yeasty bread, you can take that and divide it up into a whole bunch of other pieces.
And it'll grow.
And then you put that into the flour of the other, and then that little bit of yeast. So with one loaf of bread, you can make 100 loaves of bread.
Jeez.
Because you have one ball of yeast, and you can make it all rise. So that's the first Jesus experiment of explaining how we have yeast to make
How long does that
leavened bread.
typically take? Just like exactly.
It's like a day. They exaggerate
yeah.
it in mythological proportions.
Yeah,
So saying like he got it magically in one
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
but the story is he had one loaf of bread, and you can turn that into many.
Yeah.
And the same thing with like Jack Daniels or any type of whiskey. It's called like the sour mash,
Wow.
and it's a little bit of the original that has the yeast in it, and then you throw it in, and it reproduces and creates
Interesting.
alcohol. So that's what happens. So it happens with alcohol and bread. So it was yeast, and its fermentation is probably the most important chemical reaction in human history. Besides, there are a few of them: bronze, fire, silicon, but fermentation is there because it was a part of all human culture, which allowed us to be here. And then the other one is food. What's the other one? Oh, the fish. Because the idea of fish was that you could take one or two fish and turn it into many. And that's the idea that if you created they were the Fertile Crescent and all that, they had 10,000 years of agricultural understanding, and they understood that if you took some fish, or you put two fish together, they're going to have sex. They didn't know what's happening underwater,
Yeah.
but then they knew that a month later, you would have 10,000 fish.
Popping up.
Or, you know what I mean? It'd be
Yeah.
like in a river, be like, where the fuck do these come from? Magic, we don't understand. Be like, because it is magic.
Yeah.
You take two fish or five fish,
They turn into a
throw it in
thousand,
there, and
yeah.
then you have enough fish for a wedding.
Yeah.
And so that's the miracles of Jesus explained through technical terms. But they didn't know the ideas of science and fermentation, biology, reproduction. So they just took all those explanations of natural phenomenon and called it God.
So you believe Jesus was a physical being?
I think that he
Born
was an
out of proportion?
embodiment of. I'm sure that there were thousands of Jesuses at the time, of people that were non-Roman, who were speaking against imperial Rome, but also dealing with the tribal cultures of the Mediterranean at the time, because there was a big trading port of lots of religions, lots of people. It was like a big cultural center with political, and economic happenings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because soon after Jesus, that time was the collapse of the Roman Empire. About 100, maybe like 200 years later.
Post-death.
They say 400 years later, with the collapse of Rome was in the year 400 AD or so, but it started crumbling way before that, and read about the time of Jesus a little bit before that. Then that Rome separated, but then so there was the political aspect, and then the cultural political aspect, and the other component would be the explanations of science, and then the other part so it was real people acting politically, real people doing what is it, frontier medicine type stuff, like who had an understanding of an advanced understanding better than, you know what I mean, like the weird
99%.
shit that they did of like
Yeah.
bleeding people out. They'd be like, this guy actually, the stuff he's doing works. And the other one is the 10,000 years of human oratory tradition that you mentioned, of that it's pretty much just the story of Osiris.
Yeah.
So
Over and
that's
over again, it's
so
recycled,
that's the idea of God and all that, and the religiosity. But then Jesus, I imagine, was just some 28-year-old, some guy between the age of Jimi Hendrix, who was 27,
R.I.P.
and the age of Martin Luther King, who was, I think, like 36. So between that age is a revolutionary age of where you're dumb enough to do stuff. You're young enough to be stupid, but old enough to actually have a little sense to you.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the story of mankind throughout history. But in that particular time, we embodied it as Jesus, who is definitely brown and not the white-looking Renaissance guy.
Well, I can actually tell you exactly who that guy is. That's the son of a former pope. The modern day Jesus.
Is it one of them? Yeah.
It was. I think it's a 13th century pope.
I think a lot of those dudes probably had that look at the time. Long, flowy hair, the beards. Because Jesus always, his hair is always nice and shiny and glistening. But that's the reality of it. But like I said, I imagined it was hundreds of people. Like, imagine the Mediterranean. Every 100 miles was another Jesus.
Yeah.
And then one traveler would be like, dude, did you hear about that guy? And like, dude, I heard about him too. Yeah, what's his name?
Jesus of Nazareth,
yeah,
man.
exactly. Yeah. Joe, no.
Turning fish into millions.
Yep.
That's I've always wondered, like, I grew up Catholic or Christian, whatever you want to refer it. I don't know what the difference is at this point. But I grew up in that establishment.
Anyone that believes in Jesus is a Christian.
Okay.
And then it went to a Protestant and Catholic. And then there are a whole bunch of other ones.
Okay.
Like Orthodox.
I'm pretty sure my family is Catholic.
You're
at the
Catholic.
moment. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't,
if you're in Massachusetts and have Irish or Italian blood, it's Catholic.
Gotcha. I just remember being in Sunday school, man, and I would always just be like, all right, what the hell is going on right now? I started asking questions, and they didn't like that, the instructors, and then I was like, why are they getting mad that I'm asking questions? Like, aren't you supposed to ask questions? And then that was a young age, and then I just rapidly started realizing, like, yo, this is ridiculous for me, not for everybody. Some people need beliefs, and I have a belief in something myself. I think but rationally, it's religion's irrational. It's just the belief of we're all scared of what's on the other side, so we need something to make us cozy, so we don't go crazy and depressed all the time about the fact that we're gonna die one day.
I agree.
And again, that's coming from a person who believes in a belief of some kind. So I'm a hypocrite in that sense, but I see all the war that's been fought over religion and all the suppression and all the fear mongering and just the invention of hell and the devil and Lucifer. It's like, for me, that's a scare tactic. Be good, do what we say, or you're gonna rot in hell. Why the hell would a fallen angel who's against God persecute you and torture you for eternity if you went against the man he doesn't like? You know what I mean? It's like, what's the rationale in that?
Before the same thing I mentioned is that we're all evil and we all have good in us. Before the idea of God being good and Satan being bad before that dichotomy. It was the mythology, and all of the characters in mythology always had good traits and bad traits. So they'd always be helping and saving, but they'd always be scandalous and murdering at the same time because they reflected humans.
Yes.
Yep. And then, so the gods reflected humans, but then what happened during Christianity was that they turned it into a dichotomy of good and evil instead of the coexistence, the yin and the yang
Yes.
of both of them. So it was good or evil.
I think that's I just thought this on the spot. And then you said that. I think that's a very early representation of dividing the world. You know, it's the separation of things. I don't know why the structures that be seem to like the idea of separation of people, of ideas, of beliefs. But maybe it's a cosmic or a universal thing that it's just like maybe no one's even scheming for it. But things always seem to be separated, opposed to being united in like a duality, as in like a Hindu or Buddhist type of belief of the duality
Yeah.
of the world. It's very odd that things just naturally seem to separate themselves like that.
It always goes through cycles of chaos to structure, from chaos to structure.
Yeah.
We're in a little bit of a chaos area right now. So it wonders what the structure will be. Because hopefully I like chaos in so much as that it leads to structure. Because if the structure is bad, we need elements of chaos to disrupt it, which allow time for change.
Yes.
What was it? Creation from destruction. So,
Kind of like the meteor hitting the earth,
Right.
wiping out the dinosaurs, giving birth
right.
to
But see, you
humanity.
can't, right? But then I'm also thinking now, we can't blame modern religion for people using religion to hurt other people because at the time of the great Egyptians, they had giant cultural wars and enslavements and
Yeah.
doing it for probably cultural reasons. And I think we associate God with culture. So it's always all the wars and stuff. It's not because of God, it's because of the cultures participating in it, and they have a God. So it's coincidental.
Yeah, you look back at like the Aztecs, even they were like they were enslaving people and killing people for religious and beliefs for God. You know, they were cutting off their genitals for belief of God to sacrifice to the gods. Like, what the hell is
I've
it?
never heard of that one.
Yeah, like they would what's the word?
Mutilate?
Mutilate. Thank you. Self mutilate themselves for it wouldn't always be genitals, but it would be body parts. Sometimes it would be genitals, and they would do it to please their gods or to be closer with their gods. It's like, why the hell does every major civilization of all time seem to have to find a way to connect with gods of some kind? All civilizations have done it throughout the world. They all have either built temples or sanctuary or whatever, or it's pyramids. It's insane. It's first of all, it's weird that they all agree on that somehow. Second of all, why the hell do they always seem to think that God wants bloodshed? Doesn't that seem like the opposite of what an almighty creator would want out of its creation? If you go by the stereotypical creator, the loving creator, the creator of all,
I guess.
I don't know.
What is it? I think in the Bible, it's the Old Testament God is a cruel God.
Yeah, well, that's a dickhead right there. That
And
guy's
then,
a dick.
Yeah, and then the second one is a good God. And that goes back because I say that religion was used to explain natural phenomenon. And there they understood the cataclysmic events that could happen of plagues, locusts, flooding, Armageddons. I think that's part of the 10,000 years, 100,000 years of oral tradition that culminated into the Bible. And then
Potentially
the
longer.
New Testament, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the New Testament was just an explanation of the modern science and sociology at the time. There you go.
You sorry, what were you saying?
No, that's it.
You ever heard of the Book of Job or Job?
No.
It's really interesting. Basically, this a brief summary is God and the devil were having an argument, and he was like, Job. I'm just calling him Job. I don't know how to pronounce it. Job doesn't actually love you. He just loves what you give to him. And God's like, no, Job loves me. I created him. He's like, really? Take everything away from Job and see how much he loves you. So he kills his whole family. He like burns down his house or something like that. He gets rid of all his crops and all his farm pets and all that. And it's just like. It's why would God do all those things to prove a point to a nefarious being?
Those are just all those stories. So many of the stories in the Bible are to not be true
Taken
factual
literal.
stories,
Yeah.
but there's supposed to be truth in the story.
Okay.
Of that, you could turn it into a shitty meme and say,
Yeah.
be like, you know what I mean? Like, life is good when it's good, and that you see the true colors of a person when you take away what they have, or what, you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
could turn all of those into proverbs, all the little stories. So those are just stories to go over human emotions. I think that's the way I look at it. Just because when you read it, it has elements of truth, interpretation of like, has lessons in
Yeah.
life of what, because the first, even though you're a human, it's not the first time that what you're experiencing has happened.
Yeah.
Everyone is going through what you're
Something,
going
yes.
through. And
One
I
way
think,
or another.
yeah, and I think the Bible, through some of its stories, it was intended to show that connectivity so that you can relate to the story, because human beings learn better through stories than actual lessons. So if those oral stories were passed down for 1,000 years, there was truth to them. Like that someone could get a lesson. Same thing with all mythologies.
Yeah, I see. That's one of the positives I see in mythologies or ideologies in general. Is it can have the ability to connect individuals on a scale. It can also divide them very, very clearly and evidently. But I think it can also connect the people within that group. But you got to ask yourself: is it good to only connect with people in your group? Because how many how many
Yeah.
religious wars have been fought? Most wars
Yeah.
are over religion or
Yeah.
ideologies.
Well,
That or money.
that's it. It ends up
Yeah.
turning into the cultural divide that
Yeah.
allows you to dehumanize the other. Because what happens is that you can't have both being true.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Because
People refuse.
your absolute belief of that's the way the world and universe operates can't be disproven by allowing an other person's explanation to be true.
Yeah.
So it's a zero sum game, but what they have to realize is that both interpretations are faulty because it's committed by human beings, and human beings are fallible, and they're liars and they're cheaters, and they're also people who want to do the best for their group. So the religiosity is not stable foundation to build a global universal view, especially as much as we know about the world now. I think that people are learning that that's outdated. But what stinks about that is that we're losing the 10,000 years of documented lessons. You know what I mean? Of understanding our connection to the universe, to the stars, to each other. And then,
Just because of how modern civilization
and what
is.
sucks is that we've associated by saying the Bible is not true, that's not factual, that there's no truth in it. And that's a mistake, because there's truth even though it's not factual.
Interesting, yeah. I can see that. I mean, ultimately for me is I just think it's, and again this isn't proven. I think my belief is just it's all misidentifying beings. The demons, the angels, whatever the hell you want to call them,
Yeah.
jinns. Anunnaki, whatever civilization you want to pick them out of. They all have the same beliefs. There's good, there's evil. These things influence humanity in a bad way. Some of them like to connect with them and
Yeah.
sacrifice for them. Some like to do the other thing. Ultimately, it's like, listen, there might be something going on, whether it be something supernatural, something extraterrestrial, but maybe, just maybe, there's actual forces at play that we can't maybe comprehend at the moment, or maybe we do, but we refuse to accept them as a possibility because we're so science-based in this world nowadays, which isn't a bad thing, but I just, I think, I don't know what I was getting at there, I lost my train of thought. Ultimately, I just think, my belief is, I think all the angels and demons and all the negative and good, I think it's all just extraterrestrial influences personally. That's
Okay.
that's
All right.
me. And that's something I'm not going to sit down and argue with the freaking science.
Right.
This is how can I prove that?
That's that's it, because the religions are very human centric,
Yeah.
and they're very earth centric. And the reality we found out with Galileo and Copernicus is that we are not human centric, and we
Yeah.
are not earth centric. Is that, yeah? So the explanations of religions don't understand the universe.
Yeah.
They just couldn't. That was a limitation because it was bound by natural observation in humans.
Except for ancient Sumer for some reason, because they had a mapped out, detailed in size oriented and correct order
yeah, of all the
our
stuff.
of our
Well,
solar system, which is absolutely just
Well,
insane.
the reason they have that is because the stars were indicative of the change of seasons.
Okay.
So your knowledge of the stars gave you an ability to predict the future.
Yeah, but would that?
And by knowing that where you are in the Earth's rotation determines what season you're in, and knowing what season you're in lets you know what weather you have. Knowing what weather you have allows you to plant the proper crops, which enhance your ability for survival.
I agree with
Yeah.
that. I'm curious.
So knowledge of the stars, and that was their main data point to the universe. There was no other data point there was the sun and the moon and the stars.
Not for Sumer though. Sumer they knew of every planet in our solar system. That's my point. They knew about the size of them and the detail.
Well,
in correct order.
yeah.
There's tablets of
Yeah.
our solar system mapped out in impeccable detail. The only one thing that's wrong with it is one extra planet, which is a little weird. Maybe they misinterpreted a star as a planet or something, or whatever. But how the hell did they know that?
Well, that's you can see because Mars looks different than the stars. It's red.
Okay, I understand that.
And then all the other Saturn looks different. Jupiter looks different.
Yeah, but I understand that. I'm not disagreeing with that. My thing is, how do they know the size difference in the order that these are in our solar system? You can't see Neptune. You can't see Pluto. You can't see some planets with the naked eye. It's not possible.
Yeah.
They would have to be so extremely advanced. First of all, they're the first modern civilization. So the fact that the first go, I started yelling again. The first go just knew what the hell was going on.
Well, that's my point, is that knowledge of the stars is what gave them the capacity to grow crops. And the ability to grow crops allowed them to sustain better civilizations. And during those civilizations, they were able to specify occupations. You know what I mean? Once they allowed agrarian societies to settle, and then they had specified roles or specialization, human specialization, which allowed the civilizations to build. So without that first data point of knowing the stars, there would be no civilization. So we've actually lost sight of the stars. So we have no idea where we are in the universe, whereas that was their first step of being around campfires and all that stuff and trying to figure out the world. The only standard they had that was constant was the stars.
I agree. Yeah, that's evident across all civilizations.
So that's why the ancient Egyptians, the Sumerians, that's why their insight was so phenomenal on knowledge of the stars, because that was life or death. So it's not that they had these great civilizations that found out about stars. They found out about the stars and our place in the universe and then created great civilizations.
I agree with everything. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I don't want to be like a dick. I totally agree. That makes total sense. I can't get over the fact that they just knew the position of every single planet. In the exact correct order, the exact size.
I think it's relative.
I think it's crazy. I think it's insane.
I think it's relative, and it's after 10,000 years of observation.
Yeah.
Because have you ever looked at the stars?
Not as much as I should. I've looked a few times. But I've been in Maine, deep Maine. And
I could point out
the best.
Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. I could point out to you any day. Well, during the summer, Jupiter and Saturn are very obvious. Very obvious. Mars is always red. You can kind of see it. And then, so that's half of them.
Yeah, but would you be able to put them in the correct order, chronologically?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just thinking of myself. I couldn't do any of that. Maybe I don't know.
We haven't spent enough time for it.
Not nearly enough, no.
People don't know that the sky looks different during the summer and the winter because we've lost relationship with the stars. We don't know what stars look like in the the average American does not know what real stars look like.
Just balls of fire, correct?
No, I mean
Oh,
enough
like
where you can see the
okay.
Milky Way
Yeah,
of
yeah,
back
yeah.
in the day,
Yeah.
and it's breathtaking and amazing
Yeah.
and so cool. And we've lost our connection with those stars, which is really sad for humanity because that's our fundamental concept in relation to the universe, which then allowed us to create civilizations to let us get here. So we're losing touch of our reality of time and space, and we're being sucked up into the nothingness of hating each other as monkeys instead of doing the outward observing.
It's kind of like we're kind of stuck in like a matrix, like a cycle of just nonstop nonsense. We're worried about what the next reality TV show is.
Exactly.
But in reality, we are on a planet spinning tens of thousands of miles an hour around a giant ball of fire in an ever-expanding, infinite plane of mostly emptiness, filled with a lot of just stunning things that we can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Constant things that could easily kill us any second.
Yeah.
Black hole, just anything, anytime. And it's never ending. It never stops.
Yeah.
Like, there's an infinite number of solar systems and galaxies. And and I don't know, maybe and then you got the flat earthers who are like, fuck that, man. That's not that's a different story. But you know what I mean? It's just why like it's a damn crime that we are so just distracted and don't care anymore. The fact that how insane our circumstances really are. Like it's insane.
Big time.
I don't know. One of my favorite things to do is late at night. Like I would just smoke a little pot. When I'm going to bed, I'll put on I have a VR headset now, so I'll put on a VR headset and I'll
nice.
I'll go on YouTube and just look up like space videos. And
there you go.
Dude, it's the craziest thing ever.
There you go.
It's the closest thing you can currently get to experiencing like what craziness actually lies out there. You know, it's if you have a VR headset, I highly recommend just giving it a try. Do anything underwater. Connect to anything aside from just this civilization type of thing we built for ourselves, man.
You're like, connect to something. You need to get away. Put on this VR headset and disappear.
I know. If you can go to the Grand Canyon, if you can go to see the Northern Lights, do that, please. But if you can't, do what you can do to experience something different.
Yep. That's where we're at.
Damn, man.
All right, I think we figured it out.
Oh yeah, man.
Another problem. Good job.
Thank you, man.
All right. Adios. Good looks. Peace.
Absolutely.